Welcome to the Better Together Here podcast with your hosts Devin
and Ashley,
helping you make the most of your time in New York City.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Better Together Here podcast. My name is Devin.
And my name is Ashley.
And we're going to dive into a topic that if you are considering coming to New York or you've been here before, you've probably asked yourself, and that is, when is the best time to visit New York City? We're going to talk about each of the 4 seasons, some pros, some cons. We will tell you the best time. We will tell you the worst time. So let's get right into it. It's important to realize that trying to answer the question of when is the best time to visit New York City, it's very subjective. We're all different. We all have different opinions. We all like different things. We all have different experiences that we enjoy or dislike, etc. So you really have to ask yourself some questions. We're going to give you our take on each season and times that are good, times that are less good, but really it comes down to what matters to you when you're visiting New York City. So here are 3 questions that if you ask yourself these questions, you can kind of have a better understanding of when the time will be best based on some ideas that we're going to give you. So the first question is, what activities do you care about most? Do you care about sports? Do you care about holiday events? Do you care about, for example, the Macy's Day Parade? Do you care about going out to a lot of different bars and restaurants and clubs? Do you care about going to a lot of museums? Like, what is important to you in regards to activities?
Do you care about nightlife, or do you care about eating in all of the fanciest restaurants in the city?
So that's question number 1. Question number 2, how much is weather a factor for your style of travel / vacationing? Because again, if you're the type of person where you love being outdoors, you want to go to all the gardens and all the parks and, go walk around and bike places, then you probably won't like New York in the winter. But if you don't really care about weather, and if it's not a big factor for your type of travel, if you're just here to eat, winter might be better because there are less crowds, those types of things. So that's question number 2. Question number 3 is, how much do crowds bother you? Because at the end of the day, oftentimes the best times to visit are often the more crowded times. So you have to ask yourself how much crowds do or don't bother you, because it's New York City. It's busy to begin with, but when you come during peak kind of tourist times, it's going to be even more busy. So those are the 3 questions to ask yourself before you decide on a time to come visit New York.
And with all that said, these are just our opinions. So hopefully you can ask yourself these questions and you can use this podcast to help guide you in the right direction and get the most out of your trip to New York City.
And although they are our opinions, they've never been wrong. So
Never.
let's dive
Especially
right.
mine.
Neither of our opinions have ever been wrong, individually or collectively. So let's dive into those opinions. Okay. Visiting New York City in the spring.
There's nothing like spring in New York.
Spring in New York is beautiful. If you come at the right time, you can get the cherry blossoms throughout different parts of the city. You get all of the flowers blooming. All of the different beautiful botanical gardens are going to be kind of at the peak time in the spring. The temperatures are nice. I mean, yeah, spring is just beautiful in most places, but especially in New York.
Coming from the West Coast, because we used to live in Utah, coming to New York City in the springtime, it really is different coming from a desert to coming to the East Coast. There are blooms everywhere. It's very, very green. Every tree gets blossoms and blooms. There are daffodils all over Central Park. It's like bright yellow for about a month straight. It really is a beautiful time.
Agreed, 100%. Another pro of the spring in New York City is just the city has this feeling of the winters are a bit brutal, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but like the winters are a bit tough here and people kind of hole up for the winter, and there's almost this feeling of like hibernation and everyone's just kind of trying to get through it. And then in the spring, the city wakes up and there's this kind of buzz and people kind of coming out of this winter slumber. And I don't know, it feels like people are friendlier. Like it's just like people are happy to be around people again and to be outside. And I don't know, there's just kind of warmth literally and figuratively that comes out in spring in New York.
Yeah, people are just not as cranky in the spring. Everyone's just a little happier that it's not miserable outside anymore. And there's flowers everywhere. I mean, how can you be cranky when you're walking around and it's beautiful outside?
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, as it's getting warmer and things are kind of starting to open up, you do get more events and activities that start back up. Like, for example, walking tours. There's a lot of different walking tours in New York City that you can check out, but most of those may stop in the really middle of the winter. So things are starting to open up. There's more happening, more activities. So some of the cons. The weather can be nice, like temperature wise, it's starting to get warmer, but you will get lots of rain and just volatility in the weather. We had a couple of our good friends come visit, and they were here for probably 5 days, and it just was a torrential downpour for about 3 of those days. And we made do, and we still did most of what we wanted, but we had to tweak plans like, oh, we were going to go on a Central Park bike ride. We couldn't do it the one day, had to do it later, those types of things, because it is the East Coast and you're on the coast and you're going to get a lot of rain in the spring in New York.
And in New York City, a lot of the experience of New York City is walking around. So your experience is going to inherently change if you are walking around and it is pouring rain outside. Another thing to consider is if it's pouring rain outside and you plan on being outside of your hotel room for most of the day, you might not want to risk getting wet. So you might spend more money on a Lyft or an Uber or a cab to get around versus walking/taking the subway.
Definitely a factor. A con that I kind of put in here is that sometimes you get spring breaks in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And I don't know what it is, but something about these crowds and the spring break crowds, I'm not talking like frat boys spring break, that type of thing, but sometimes you just get these big, huge groups of people walking around, taking up a lot of space, oftentimes having bad tourist behavior. I don't know. It's just something to think about. It's not usually a huge deal, but unless, if you are in the heart of Midtown, those types of things, it can be annoying. Another con, and then we'll move into summer here, is there are fewer sporting opportunities. So if you do like going to sporting events, whether that's in person or, going out to sports bars, those types of things, the NBA and NHL are either they can be over or getting close to over, or it's more expensive because it's the end of the regular season or the playoffs are about to start. You don't have football at all. You have baseball. That's really kind of the main thing if you're coming in spring, April and beyond. So kind of less on the side of sporting, but overall spring, a phenomenal time to visit New York. I would say the best month to come spring wise would be April, like mid to late April.
Yeah, I feel like the weather is decently pretty mild.
And it seems to usually be like if you come in April, you're getting that warmer weather, you're getting the prettiness of the blooms and the flowers, but it's usually a little less crowded, I would say, in April.
But with that said, April is our anniversary month, and that's when we walked to the boathouse in Central Park on our anniversary, and it was a clear blue, beautiful day. And within an hour, luckily we were inside, but we watched people riding in the boats get absolutely pounded by rain. It was pretty entertaining, to be honest, but the weather is very volatile.
It was entertaining because we were inside. If
Yes.
we were outside, it would have been less fun.
Thank goodness we didn't do our romantic boat ride
Thank goodness.
at that time, because those people were paddling to get back.
Literally a torrential downpour, and they're out in like the lake part on the boats in Central Park, and they're trying to cover their heads like with like a magazine. It was hilarious.
Things can change. That was my point.
Things can change for sure. If you want consistent weather, if that's what you're looking for, amongst other things, summer is an awesome time to come to New York. So let's break down some of the pros of the summer. There are literally songs about it. Like summer in New York, it is its own special feeling, its own special beast that like can't be duplicated in my experience. There are so many concerts and festivals and activities. Like everything just kind of hits its stride in the summer. People plan for events and activities, and there's just more going on in the summer. That's just naturally how it happens. And similarly, you get a lot more of like the free activities than you'd find in the other seasons. So for example, Bryant Park or Riverside Park, or some of the different, like even Central Park, they'll have free events throughout the year. And there's always more in the summer. Again, it's mostly a weather thing. Like if you're planning outdoor events, you want to have reliable weather. And so the summer, you get that. You get a lot of free activities, a lot more things to do generally in the summer.
For example, in Bryant Park, they do a free yoga in the park on a weekly basis at like 5 or 6 p.m. And there's like, you're doing yoga with like 1,000 people in Bryant Park, which is awesome. Hudson River Park does free high-intensity interval training classes. They do free yoga classes. They do free dance classes where the first hour is a dance instruction, and then the second hour is a big dance party out with new people. Central Park does free concerts in the park in summertime on summer nights. So lots of really free, fun activities in the parks.
And one note, on most of those, they are free. a lot of them you do have to register beforehand, so just check out each individual spot's like website to register. Another really awesome part of summer in New York is just being outside, outdoor dining, rooftop bars, going out on the water, taking a sailboat, taking, one of the boat. Like there's just things going on outdoors that you're going to get in the summer that you won't get in other seasons.
And honestly, in my opinion, it's really nice that it stays light for the majority of the night, or at least the first part of the night. The sun doesn't set until around 9 p.m. most nights in the summer, so you get more time for daytime activities than you don't normally get in the winter.
And it's warm, so wanting to go bar hopping and go explore different parts of the city late into the night instead of coming out like you would in the winter and it's freezing cold and you got to bundle up, you're just going from place to place, enjoying the warm summer evenings. Which brings us to the cons. It is hot and sticky in the summers in New York City, and it is 10 times worse in the subway stations. You will literally be outside, it's hot, you're sweating, you're walking around, you got a tank top on, and you're feeling warm, and then you walk down into the subway stations, and some of them feel like they are pumping heat into the subway. They're not. It's just these massive trains producing heat, and it's trapped in your underground, but it feels like 10 to 20 degrees hotter.
Feels like you're getting hit with like a hairdryer when you walk down the subway station, and it smells really bad. If you've heard that New York smells terrible, I would say for the majority of the year, it's fine, but in the summer, it really does smell bad. Like New York City doesn't have alleyways for companies, businesses, apartments to put their trash out. And so on trash day, the trash just gets put on the sidewalk, and before it gets picked up, it starts to smell, especially when it's 90 degrees outside and 7 a.m.
And you combine that with all of the human and dog piss in New York City, and it just hits different when it's 90 degrees with 75% humidity. It's so gross. But I would still say summer is an amazing time to visit New York. And I feel like as well, in regards to crowds, you don't get really, really crowded peak times in summer. It's just kind of more spread out. Like people are just doing summer vacations, and so you're less likely to get like a really crowded weekend unless it's a holiday weekend. So summer, an amazing time to come to New York. If you do come in summer or any time of the year, you will have to go to this episode's You'll Have to Check It Out segment. It is Meisel's Chocolates in Midtown. This is a dessert, chocolate, and sweets spot in Midtown, close to the park. You can hop in, and they have homemade cookies and fudge and all kinds of candy, but their specialty, they have over 100 types of licorice.
Their licorice selection is truly incredible. If you like licorice at all, you should go in there. The girls that work in there are really great at giving recommendations. They will often let you sample different things if you don't know exactly what you like. They have amazing, amazing candy. That's usually what we go in and get is the licorice, but they have really good homemade chocolate as well. That's also fantastic.
Like Ashley said, the people there are super helpful. So if you say, hey, I want to spend $20 or whatever, they'll give you a variety of things, and you can try a lot of different things.
That is one thing I will say. I would go in and say, I would like an assortment of licorice, and I would like to spend this amount of money. Because one time I didn't tell them how much money I wanted to spend, and I told the lady that I wanted an assortment, and I spent $45 on licorice.
But it was damn good licorice.
It was really, really good licorice, but the sticker shock was a little much. So I would say go in with $1 amount that you want to spend, and then go from there. And all of their licorice is imported from Finland and from different places in Europe, so it's authentic and it's made differently in Europe than it is made here. So if you like black licorice at all, highly, highly recommend the European licorice here.
And when you go here, you're also supporting just a small local business. There's only one location. You're not going to some chain and getting chocolates that you can get anywhere. It's a great kind of authentic New York spot, a tiny little cozy, everything walls filled, basically candy store. So check out Meisel's Chocolates in Midtown. All right, on to the fall, which if you go on online forums, Reddit, whatever it might be, talk to people, most people will probably say that the fall is the best time to visit New York. We're going to tell you why that might be. So we talked about this a little bit before, but fall is the peak time for sports. There's so many sports teams in New York City, and if you come in like September or October, just depending on when you kind of line it out, you could see an NFL, an NBA, an NHL, an MLB, and an MLS game, like all in one 4 or 5 day trip. Obviously, that would be a lot. You may not be going to those. You might just be going to like a sports bar or a supporters bar, but there's so much sports happening in the city, and New York City is a great place for sports, whether you're going in person or just going to different bars and having the awesome sports bar experience.
And that is something that's very unique to New York City. Not only could you go and see all of those different sport teams like live and in person, you can also go to very specific sports supporters bars for your specific team. So Devin is a Cleveland Browns fan, and they have a Cleveland Browns supporters bar. He's a Tottenham fan.
Cleveland Browns fan too. Are you not owning being a Cleveland Browns fan?
I'm warming
live
up
on
to
the
it.
podcast?
I'm warming up to it. But I'm a Tottenham fan now.
Yes.
So we
I
go
forgot
to a
mention
Tottenham
the Premier
supporters
League.
bar. It's unlike anywhere else in the city. Any team that you love, there is a supporters bar where there will be hundreds of people cheering for your team, even if it's the Cleveland Browns.
I'm not going to take offense to that. If you were wanting to do that, we actually just put live our New York City sports supporters bar mega list that we are continually adding to. We have all the NFL teams on there and all the English Premier League teams currently, and we'll be adding more. So check that out on our website. Okay, other great parts about fall in New York, the foliage in the parks. It's breathtaking. The leaves changing. I feel like if you go look up beautiful pictures of Central Park or Central Park views or whatever, I feel like the best ones you're going to find are in the fall when the leaves are changing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, walking around Central Park in the fall is really unlike anything else. It really is breathtakingly beautiful, and everything is landscaped really well, and they have more fall blooms of flowers, so you get the brand new blooms of flowers, and you also get the leaves. It's just a beautiful time.
And the weather starts to cool down. It's not that peak hot, sticky summer weather. It's not cold yet either. You will get rain, and it can be like a bit sporadic, but the fall, it really doesn't have a whole lot of cons. Oh, one other pro here, or a couple other. It's generally cheaper to travel compared to like the peak tourist season, which we're going to talk more about, of like mid-November through basically the new year. It's cheaper if you come in the fall. Before we lived here, often traveled in the beginning of November. We would come around Ashley's birthday, and it was usually the cheapest time for us to get out here, at least where we were coming from. But hotels are usually a little bit cheaper. It's just, it's a good time to travel. And you can get some awesome events, specifically the New York City Marathon, which is always the first Sunday of November. You might be thinking, why would I care about a marathon? The New York City Marathon, it is a party. People come out. The city is loud. The city is live. Like, it's a party. It's fun to experience. I've ran the New York City Marathon once before. I'm running it again this year. As a participant, it's like nothing else. I mean, it's just amazing because there are so many people out. You can also catch the Macy's Day Parade. That's a great thing that's in kind of the later part of fall. And if you come after Thanksgiving or around Thanksgiving, preferably right after, you're going to get all the holiday decor before all of the like peak holiday season tourists come. So yeah, the week after Thanksgiving, it's awesome because it's not as crowded yet, but you get all of the trees up at Rockefeller Center. Places are putting their Christmas lights up by then. The Christmas window displays, it's just, you can get all of that before the crazy crowds of peak holiday season.
And you get better weather than peak holiday season as well.
The one other kind of con here, it kind of an inverse of what I just talked about, but you do get pretty major crowds and road closures for the New York City Marathon and Macy's Day Parade specifically. The road closures, it's only for, the first part of the day, but it can be quite a pain if you're trying to navigate to get certain places. So just be aware that it is a con that can pop up.
Case in point, when we were tourists in New York City visiting, and we were heading to our hotel on the day of the New York City Marathon, we were trying to navigate on the east side to get to our hotel. And we're tourists pulling our suitcase, and as married people do, disagreeing about the directions, and every direction we tried to go was closed off, and they don't let you pass because there's a marathon going on. So keep that in mind. It does get trickier to navigate.
It can be hectic. You love to see it when it's other people, like watching married couples argue about directions. When you get to watch it, it's so funny, but when you're in it in the moment, you're like, this is the worst moment of my life.
It's definitely funnier when people are pulling suitcases as well.
Yeah, I love to witness that. Okay, and that leads us to the last season, winter. This one, a lot of people would say winter is not a good time to come to New York. We're going to give you some reasons actually why it is. Okay, the very first one, which is kind of why a lot of people like to come to New York City in the winter, is the holiday decor. Like we just talked about, you get all the different decor and festivities. You really can't match it. You get Rockefeller Center. You get these bars that set up wild decor.
The window displays on Fifth Avenue.
The window displays on Fifth Avenue. There's Bryant Park Market, all the Christmas lights. Like there is a special
ice skating
feel.
in Central Park, ice skating in Bryant Park. Really, like Christmas time is a beautiful and very like fun, exciting time to be in the city.
It is an awesome time. Another pro, especially if you come. Okay, so let's like clarify this too. That from the second week-ish of December until New Year is going to be so crowded, and there are going to be so many people. People love to come to New York City for Christmas and like for this holiday specifically, and that December 10th through January 2nd or 3rd, depending on when it lands for New Year's Eve, it's going to be wild. It's going to be pretty crowded, especially if you're doing any of the more touristy things. There's going to be a lot of people. But if you come after that, the second week of January through basically all of February, it is going to be almost like it's way quieter and it's cheaper. Coming in those peak tourist times, the peak holiday season, it's like very, very expensive to fly, to get hotels, everything. But if you come after that, it's actually a really, really cheap time to visit New York City.
And you get to do pretty much all the same things you were going to do coming in the middle of December and just do them in January or February. You can still go ice skating. You can still walk around the same area. I guess the Rockefeller tree isn't there. But yeah, the biggest downside of coming the second week of December is New York City at Christmas time is iconic, and everyone else also thinks so. I just like generally wouldn't recommend coming at that time because a lot of the stuff you want to do, like Devin said, there are going to be really long lines for things. Everything's going to be more crowded. It's going to be harder to get a reservation, harder to get Broadway tickets, harder to get into bars, all the things. And New York City has so much more to offer than hang out with a bunch of tourists all day long.
It's very true. One last pro of the winter is that when it does snow, it can be really beautiful. The urban landscape with fresh snow contrasted with the park and being able to walk in the snow-covered Central Park and, you know, different parks in the city. Like, it is beautiful. But again, the cons here, like it's the winter on the East Coast. It is cold. It's gray. It's rainy. It's snowy. We've had mild winters overall the past few winters, but still a lot of rain. So you're just going to be dealing with cold, miserable weather a lot in the winter.
And honestly, there are some times where the New York City winter just shocks you to your core. Like when a couple weeks ago, we went outside and it was like 12 degrees outside and it was bone-chillingly cold and windy and icy, and it's not a fun time to be able to like walk around and enjoy the city when it's that cold outside.
And a note on that too is the way like the tall buildings work is sometimes you'll be walking and you're like, oh, it's actually not too cold, and then you turn a corner and you get these like wind tunnels that come through the city and it's like 15 degrees colder with the wind chill and it's just brutal. So be prepared for that. But again, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, if you don't really care a ton about outdoor activities, if you're just like, I want to eat so much food and go to all the bars and go to a lot of Broadway shows, mid-January is probably the best time to come because, again, there's not as many crowds. You are going to be able to get reservations easier. Broadway tickets are going to be cheaper. And, you know, if you're going to be going to a lot of restaurants and museums and Broadway shows, and you're fine with dealing with the cold, walking a little bit to the subway or taking a Lyft or a taxi, it's actually a really, really good time to visit New York. The first time I ever came to New York City and the first time we came together, it was like January 6th or something like that. So all of the peak New Year's Eve holiday crowds were gone, and it was a great time to visit. It was cold. We got a terrible snowstorm, but it was nice. Like it wasn't as crazy. So all that to say, the winter can be a good time. It really just depends, again, like we talked about, what is important to you. So if we had to say the worst time to visit New York City, in our opinion, it is around the holidays, like that second-ish week of December through the end of New Year's Eve weekend, whenever that lands. It's just so crowded. So if you really care about the holiday stuff, just come before that, early December or right after Thanksgiving, and you're going to get fewer crowds and still get the exciting, beautiful holiday experience of New York City. So we're going to round this out by ranking, according to us, which again, our opinions are always right, the best seasons to visit New York City.
Number 1 on our list, best time to come visit New York City is during the fall. I think the fall is beautiful. The weather is pretty mild. It is not that crowded. There's still a lot of exciting things to do. There's a lot of free activities in the park. There's a lot of concerts going on. Things haven't really shut down, and there's still a lot of energy spilling over from summertime into the fall.
100%. And second best time, in our opinion, is the summer. Again, there's just so much going on, so many activities, so many different experiences that you can have in the summer that you just can't have often in other seasons. And third,
I gotta say spring. I mean, I love spring, but really the rain being so crazy really can kind of like put a damper on the trip. Like, no one wants to be walking around a museum with your shoes wet. It's just not that fun.
We have all been there, though. It is rough. But outside of the volatility of getting a lot of rain, spring is a wonderful time to come visit New York. And again, since we're ranking it, winter is probably at the bottom of our list, mainly because the weather is just brutal and it can be really, really tough. But again, if that doesn't matter to you, and if you don't really care about cold weather, or you're coming from somewhere that's already cold, the winter can be one of the best times to visit because it's just quiet and it's a different experience. So again, these are our opinions. We did ask some of our friends, and most of them had the same response of like fall, September, October, arguably the best time to come visit New York. But again, it all comes down to what is important to you. So we're going to wrap this episode up with these 3 questions, again, to ask yourself as you're deciding when you want to come visit New York City. So number 1, what activities do you care about the most? Do you care about specific holidays, holiday events, sports, outdoor activities, those types of things? Number 2, how much is weather a factor for your style of travel and vacationing? Like we've talked about, if you're just here to go to museums and Broadway shows, winter is a great time for that because it's less crowded. And the third question is, how much do crowds bother you? Because if you are the type of person who gets overwhelmed with crowds and doesn't like the busyness of a ton of people, you will hate coming the week of Christmas.
Or around any major holiday, to be frank.
Yeah. Thanksgiving included, definitely New Year's. Like New Year's is just hectic.
4th of July gets pretty bad.
For sure.
Any 3-day weekend, like a
holiday weekend.
Yeah, holiday weekend.
For sure. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope this gave you some good insight as to how to pick the best time to come to New York for you specifically. If you have not already, please subscribe to our email newsletter. We email just once a week. We don't email spam. We don't email a bunch of junk. We email once a week with an article or a new podcast or new idea of something to make your experience in New York even better. And other than that, we'll catch you on the next episode.